Hello, Aldo here. In this video, we are going to continue with our demonstration. What I have is this hammer, polygon hammer that I've and now using Arnold lights. We set up our render so that we could now view our window here. Let's go ahead and turn this on. What I want to do, I want to show you how to create a turn-on camera and how to set up our render settings so that we could render out this scene using Arnold. So on my computer, just to go over, I have the render settings here. And first, we want to make sure that Arnold render is selected. And you could either use CPU, or if possible, if you have a computer, or if you have a graphics card, NVIDIA graphics card, you could also tell it to use a GPU. For my computer, I'm going to tell it to use a GPU, and I'm gonna my camera AA set to 4, which is a multiplier. And I also have adaptive sampling turned on and set to 10. So when I turn this on, it renders this out pretty quickly, about 5 seconds, and it has decent quality. I could always use different settings or different things to change this up, but for right now, this is good. Uh, one thing to note that if I start to increase some of these different values, it's going to add more samples, which is going to increase render time. So it's kind of trying to find the most efficient settings. Like say, for example, if I increase this to 20, just to show you that it's still rendering. There's little things that it's getting rid of. You can see, even though it says 100%, it's still rendering. So this one took 16 seconds, but you notice that it looks a lot clearer. So maybe, what if I go halfway, 15? Perhaps this will be the nice in between. But this is definitely a lot faster than using CPU. But you might not necessarily get as good quality. So it's kind of hit or miss. I would definitely want you to test it out. So I'm going to leave this at 10 for right now, because I know it renders really fast and it's good enough. Only 4 seconds. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to minimize this window for right now. So I'm zooming out on this one just to make this smaller. Because what I want to do, I want to try to uh, frame my image. What I'm going to do within my perspective window, I'm going to go right here to view. I'm going to go to camera settings. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to select resolution gate. So this is going to give me a frame so I can know what is my framing. So for my settings, let's go back to my render settings. Under common, I'm going to scroll down. I just have HD 720 selected. So if you have something higher, it'll update your resolution gate. But right now I'm using HD 720. I'm going to come back to change some of these settings in a moment. I'm going to close this window. But what I want to do, I want to create a turnaround camera. I want to have a camera that goes 360 degrees around my hammer so I can view it from all different angles. So one of the things that you can do before I do this, I'm going to go ahead and select the hammer. Let's go back into the outliner. These are two separate pieces. So I'm actually going to create a group. I'm going to go to Edit, Group, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this Poly Hammer. Because what I could do if I want to, I'm going to go ahead and select this. I'm going to, with this group selected, I'm going to go into Modify, tell it center pivot, so that it centers the pivot to this group. So what if I want to have my hammer at an angle as such? Let's see, maybe I'm going to I'm going to tilt it to one side. Because this now allows me to get a little bit closer. So I'm trying to get a view what this could potentially look. Do I want to be looking down at it? Do I want to be looking up towards it from the side? So this is optional. You don't necessarily need to do this. Put turn it to the side, but you may. But say, for example, now that I have this selected, and you know what? I kind of like this view, and I want it to be rotating around this hammer. You do not need to do this manually. Instead, I'm going to switch from the modeling menu set to the animation menu set. Under Visualize, there's an option, Create Turntable. I'm going to go into the option box here. And I already have the number of frames set to 168. That is 7 seconds at 24 frames per second. I'm going to tell it to the direction to be clockwise. And very important that you make sure you have your object selected so that it knows what to rotate around. I'm going to tell it turntable. And once I do this, I'm going to go ahead and click on it. If you notice at the very bottom, this is no longer a perspective window. This is now your turntable camera. I want to make sure that I have all 168 frames. Actually, I want 167 because frame 1 and 168 are the same. I'm going to go ahead and press play. And just so I could see what it looks like. And if I want to see it update within this view, I have to change the camera. So let's see. It's not showing. Okay, there it is. I just have to update it. So now it's turntable camera 1. Now it is updating your scene. So this might take a moment for Maya to update this window. But while Maya's doing that, one thing I want to point out is that notice that there is this ease in and ease out. So maybe you like that, maybe you don't. But if you want to get rid of it, if you want it to be all constant, I'm going to stop this. Group 1 is your turntable camera. I'm going to select group 1 right here. I'm going to go into Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And you can see that it has this ease in and ease out. I could select both of these tangents. And I could either click on this button right here, which is linear tangents, or you could go under tangents and tell it linear. So now it's linear. So when it rotates, you'll notice that it's going to be just rotating at a constant rate. Then rewind. Let's see. And close this window. Let's see if open up. Okay, there it is. So now as I rotate around, now one thing that I want to point out with this model, I'm going to go back and select my model. If you recall, I didn't smooth out my model. I just pressed 3. If I press 1 on both of them, I get my low poly model. Now, this is one of the benefits of using Arnold in that it can render out using the proxy, the smooth preview version without you needing to actually smooth out your model. Now, I could smooth it out if I want to. This is under, you select it, under modeling, under mesh. There is the smooth option right here. You go to the options and using the settings exponential. Basically, it's going to look like this. It's just going to have more detail. I'm gonna go ahead and apply it. You see that that's what it looks like, but it doesn't. It's not necessary, especially if you're using Arnold. I'm going to go ahead and undo this. Now, actually, I'll take that back. In that you might need to do this, especially if you're getting lots of graininess. Sometimes by smoothing it out, it could get rid of some of that graininess. But in this instance, uh, it looks fine like this. Okay, now that I have this situated, what I want to do, I want to go ahead and set up my render settings. So I'm going to go back into Maya, render settings. Under the Common tab, I want to give this a file name. Now, this is similar to using software rendering. It's the Common tab is the same. So I'm going to call this my poly hammer. And image format, I'm going to tell it TIFF. Let's see, under frame animation extension, I want to tell it name dot number sign dot extension. Frame padding, I just need 3. Start at frame 1 and at frame 160. I don't know if we should go to 67 or 68. I believe 68 is the same as frame 1. So I'm going to say 167. And by frame, every 1 frame. Camera, very important. I need to tell it to use my turntable camera that I've created. My preset, I'm going to use HD 720. Again, keep note that the higher the resolution, the longer it's going to take your computer to render out each frame. And let's see, HD 720. Everything else should be fine. I am using my GPU render, but again, if you do not have a GPU that's capable of rendering, you can always use CPU. It takes a little bit longer, but it still gives you really great quality. You can always test it out. Try not having this enabled first, just to see, and maybe changing this from 3 to 4. Don't go at the highest, maybe 8, but that's really increased. Let me show you. I'm gonna go to CPU. Let's move this window off to the side. I'm gonna turn this off. So this is at 4 on my computer. Okay, 6 seconds, not bad. If I increase this to 8, notice how this number is gonna increase. Total right here, 208. So if I change this to 8, okay, this is 64. Okay, this is the total 300, I'm sorry, 832. Again, this is a multiplier, meaning that it's whatever settings that you have for each individual light, it's multiplying all these things. And right now, this took 24 seconds, which, okay, looks good, but you want an average. You want what is the best quality that's going to take the less time. So what if I bring this down to 5? One thing that I should also know, let me bring this back down to 3. We start off at 3 because what you could do is under, let's see, I believe it's this one down here, this little button down here. This is to create a little snapshot so that you can see what it looks like. This is the first one at, we're set at 3. So say, okay, let me go ahead and set this to 5. So that way you could jump back and forth. So instead of trying to remember what it looks like and create another snapshot, this is at my setting at AA3, 5. Let's go ahead and jump to 8. And so now this is rendering. And as this is working, again, this is, it's a multiplier. There's more lights, more rays that are in here. Okay, great. So what I want to do is let's go ahead and create a new one. So now we can see this is the first one. So you could go through them. This was at AA at 3. We can see it's gritty. AA at 5, still gritty. AA at 8, it looks a lot better, but it also took 24 seconds as opposed to 9 seconds, 3 seconds. So you see it goes up. What if I bring this down to 4, but then I enable adaptive sampling? So with adaptive sampling, from my understanding, is that it only uses them if it needs them. So let's see, does it go less than 24 seconds? And is it better than AA8? So AA8, 24 seconds. This is 36 seconds, and it doesn't look like it's necessarily, well, just, no, I could see a little grain. So I know that, okay, I'm not going to turn this on. Maybe there's a difference between this was at 5, this was at 8, so I could always try 6. I'm not going to do that right now for you, but you kind of get the idea what you could do. So maybe I'll leave this to 5, but this was using my CPU, using my GPU at 4. So this is at 4. What if I change this one up to 8? So on my computer, uh, leaving this up to 8 at 3 seconds, pretty good. So I might just do that for right now. So now that I have these settings set in, I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'll close this window as well. To render out, you're not going to go, oh, well, first I am going to go into the rendering menu. If this was Maya software, you go to render, you use a batch render, but you don't use a batch render when you're using Arnold. Instead, you go to the render sequence. We go to the options, but we're not going to use any of the options right here. We're going to just tell it to use our camera, and all of our settings we just set in here, and I go ahead and tell it to render and close. What it's going to do, it's going to open up your render view. I'm trying to move the window. Uh, let's see, I can't move it. The window is in my other screen, and I can't move it right now, but it's basically rendering out each image and then saving it out. So depending if it really takes only 3 seconds, so it's math 3 times 167 seconds, and that's what it's going to take. So I'm going to stop this in a moment. I'll have the finished results. I'll show you a little bit later. Maybe I'll put this for my students. I'll make this available. You can see the results. But this is how you're able to set up the settings within Maya using Arnold, so that you could use Arnold, these high quality render settings. So the next video, it's I'm going to refer to a previous video, how now that we have a series of images, how we could use Adobe Photoshop to put a sequence together. So thank you for watching this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in that next video.